There's a point where it tips, there's a point where it breaks, there's a point where it bends, and a point we just can't take anymore.
I was at RTX 2014 when RoosterTeeth announced they were officially becoming a game studio starting with the RWBY game. That was the first panel of the convention I made it into, and it was one of the most inspiring days of my life. I knew they already had a prototype to work off of, but, as always, I couldn't stop myself from designing my own version in my head. It was so vivid to me, I even started working up a storyline to fit in between seasons of the show. My computer, sadly, couldn't keep up with my ambitions and only got replaced days before Monty passed away. When he died, RT left us with a simple request. We ask that you simply do something creative. Use your imagination to make the world a better place in any way that you can. With that in mind, I started this show. I figured designing's just about the only thing I'm good at, so maybe I can inspire someone somewhere to do something with the ideas I can offer. I wanted to wait to do this episode, to actually become a decent artist or a better editor or all kinds of things. I also wanted to do this episode first, since this game is what's occupied my mind ever since Monty passed. In the end, I figured I'd rather try and do this episode justice than hide from it and let the idea fade before it's too late. So for this episode, I'm breaking out the colored chalks, since color matters so much to the RWBY universe, and walking you through the 10-ish hours of design that went through my head just after hearing the announcement of the real game. Let's establish some basics. I can't imagine the game as anything other than a third-person action game, a la Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden, since the series is clearly taking notes from those types of games. I know RoosterTeeth are big Xbox fans, so I'll be modeling the controls off the Xbox One's controller. My plans for this game can be scaled to how ambitious we want to get, but certain mechanics need to be present in every version. Paramount to any scope of the game is the four main characters: RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Yang. If we're going to have all four girls, we need them all to feel distinct from each other while also making them synergize well. Keeping that in mind, we'll need to design each of the ladies separately, as if we planned on each one carrying their own game, then devise a mechanic where we can employ all four. This is easier than it sounds when we look at other action games. Normally, games like this allow you to switch weapons, but that's not an option for us since each girl has a very character-specific armament. Instead, we'll treat switching characters the way other games would switch weapons, since each lady has a very distinct style and moveset. Por ejemplo, RWBY is based around maintaining her momentum and scything through groups of enemies, while Weiss is focused more on her long-range magical capabilities and prioritizing one target at a time. Blake is about agile acrobatics and trickery, while Yang is pure, straightforward force. Each girl is a weapon unto themselves, and will represent this by being able to swap between them on the fly, using the left and right bumpers, even allowing the player to customize what order you swap through the team to better suit their personal flow. Thus, we can already see scenarios where we use Weiss to launch a magical barrage from afar, switch to RWBY to close distance, swap to Yang to deliver haymakers as the magic catches up to us, then switch to Blake to dodge the counterattack. Despite these differences, it'll be important to have certain commonalities, not just in their control schemes, but in the UI as well. In the top left, we'll have our health bar for each character, with the inactive 3 minimized. This way, you can check your team's overall status with just a glance, allowing you to make snap judgments about who to switch to in a given situation. Also, rather than saying this is each member's health, we can say it's a measure of their aura, giving a reason why they get defeated when it runs out, but also neatly explaining why they can take so many hits without injury, just like in the show. This also gives the player plenty of wiggle room for difficult areas, effectively giving you 4 health bars to burn through before the game over screen. However, this also means that you're losing combat capabilities as your team members go down, which might make tough enemies monstrously difficult since you'd be effectively losing weapons as you lost health. This is something that might be awesome and might be god-awful. I don't think I can really tell until we playtest it, so we'll keep it until we know better. Our final UI commonality will be each character's unique resource, their semblance, represented by a multi-stepped bar beneath the aura display. This is going to add a bit of resource management and depth to each character, allowing every player to slightly customize their playstyle across all 4 girls, both individually and as a unit. To explain, let's start designing each character individually. RWBY's style is about acceleration, momentum, and flow. Thus, RWBY needs to be vulnerable getting up to speed, but almost unstoppable if you keep her going. Her semblance is called speed, and it will build up whenever she deals damage with her scythe or keeps going in a given direction without stopping. It will go down whenever she gets hit hard enough to be staggered, or gradually whenever she stops. The passive power this grants her will be a damage increase based on how full her semblance gauge is. However, You'll also be able to spend gauges to trigger various special attacks. This opens her up to being built in two distinct ways. You could raise your maximum semblance along with the damage increase for having a higher amount, causing you to deal statistically higher damage per strike when your gauges are full. Or, you can be the type who builds up a few gauges quickly and then spends them left and right on a series of powerful special moves. The styles become augmented by moves you buy with XP, like losing less semblance for getting hit, building the gauges faster, or just buying more steps for the gauge so that you can end up having 7 instead of the starting 3. Weiss, on the other hand, is our team mage. She's much more precise, more focused, and more about dealing a flurry of strikes to a single target with her fencing. For Weiss's semblance, we'll have her gauge function as a mana bar, having her strikes build up energy to expend on her powerful magic attacks and glyphs, giving her the most powerful ranged abilities in the game. In addition, we can allow the player to modify her magical arsenal by customizing her suite of dust cylinders. You could give her one cylinder of each element, making her much more diverse, but stacking multiple cylinders of the same element opens up more powerful techniques for that specific element. For instance, having one cylinder of ice means you can do very basic ice damage with her sword strikes, and maybe some very minor tricks, while having 3 cylinders allows you to create the massive ice wall she used against the Deathstalker, as well as much more impressive attacks. The same would apply for the other elements, allowing players to customize their playstyle around which elements and techniques they want to wield, and allowing versatility for various situations. To make sure her sword isn't wasted, we can add in plenty of mana restoring options for repeated strikes, and bonus mana for completing combos all the way to the end, opening up devastating combos of the stabby explosion kind. Blake has 2 parts to her character that are important to remember for her design. She's functionally a ninja, and she's half cat. Because her weapon and combat style don't lend themselves to doling out massive damage, I think we embrace these elements and give Blake a more specialized role on the team. Her ninjutsu abilities will allow her to distract and disengage for the team, while her feline side gives her an element of playing with her food. So we build her combos around disabling the enemies, stunning them, knocking them down, or distracting them with her shadows, as well as embracing her agility and natural platforming capabilities. Since her weapon is functionally a grappling hook, we can use it to pull flying enemies out of the air, latch onto bigger ones to carry us around the arena, or swing around to get from place to place. This allows her to either focus on increasing the power of her debuffs as she upgrades, or the frequency which she can use her powers. Fittingly, Yang is almost the exact opposite of Blake. Yang has the shortest range of anyone on the team, using only her fists, and shotgun fists when she gets bored of non-explosive punches. However, she also hits harder than anyone else on the team per attack. This is compounded by her semblance, Force, which raises her damage in direct relation to how much health she's missing. Combat with Yang would be a constant gamble of putting yourself in harm's way as a trade-off for doling out more damage than anyone else on the team, creating a constant risk-reward assessment as you play her, and opening up interesting level-up opportunities. You can build her either as the glassiest of cannons, doling out massive damage at the cost of always being one hit from death, or as more of a tank, soaking hits for the team and making the enemies regret it. You know what? Looking at Weiss's design, I don't think it works with the rest of the team. Plus, mapping out all the dust possibilities becomes a nightmare of programming and planning on our part as developers, since we'd have to lay out each level around being beatable with every possible combination of cylinders. Instead, let's give her the same split path the other 3 ladies have. We'll still use her semblance as a mana bar for her glyphs, but down the one path we'll have her swordplay, and the other will have her magical abilities. In addition, we'll have her swordplay attacks automatically imbued with her elemental prowess for certain combos, allowing the player to swap elements on both tracks with the D-pad. This leads to cool things like a combo that always ends with a big elemental explosion that will do different things depending on what you have equipped when the combo ends. Plus, this allows us to use the same elemental switching on Blake's shadows, a trick she learned at the end of Season 2. With the characters out of the way, we have to look at controlling them. We already know the bumpers swap characters, and we'll obviously have the left stick control movement while the right controls the camera. Since the controller has actual triggers, we'll assign the firearms to the right one, allowing us to fire at any given time without having to take our thumbs off of the melee buttons, which will open up wonderful hybrid combos. We'll have A be jump because A should always be jump. We'll keep with another action game staple and have Y control your heavy attacks and X control your light attacks. I've always loved that particular standard since it presents simple combos for beginners, while allowing a surprising amount of depth for advanced play since the 2 buttons allow 6 inputs between them, which then leads to thousands of possible combinations with a minimum of button presses. Actually, let's move the light attacks to the B button, since hitting B and Y simultaneously is way easier than hitting X and Y. This leaves X and the left trigger open for whatever we want or need. I think our best allocation is to assign block to the X button, since you don't need to be blocking and attacking simultaneously. Finally, we can assign left trigger as our special button. We'll use it to activate special semblance abilities during combos, as well as our Monty signature platforming. Holding down the left trigger will allow you to run all over walls or across impossible balancing acts flawlessly, similar to the free run function in Assassin's Creed. This type of effortless platforming is crucial to really capture the essence of the show and Monty's animations in general. Environmental fight choreography is one of Monty's specialties, so we need to be able to do the same. This means we need to program most of any given level to be destructible, with plenty of columns to throw enemies through, boulders to toss around, and planes to cut in half. All four girls are extremely mobile, with their own ways of getting around we should keep intact. RWBY can use crescent rows to hook onto scenery and pull herself around. Blake has her Kusarigama that can swing her all over the place, Yang can punch through objects the other ladies can't, and Weiss has almost unlimited maneuverability between her glyphs and elemental mastery. These platforming capabilities have to extend to the enemies as well. Being able to toss a Borbatusk into the air, then jump off of it to reach a Nevermore is an imperative part of the RWBY feel, just like being able to run along the back of a Deathstalker and cut off its tail. If an Ursa throws a tree at us, skillful players need to be able to jump onto the tree, run along it to the offending bear monster, then politely explain why it shouldn't do that anymore. Thus, the collision detection on the monsters and environments needs to be near flawless for precision play, as well as able to recognize when the players are holding the left trigger or just rubbing themselves ineffectually against the wall. Now, with all of that core gameplay out of the way, we can start addressing the scale of the game. Everything we have up to now works at any scope, so it just comes down to RoosterTeeth's budget. I don't just mean money either, since a bigger story-driven game would need more environments to design and test, more opponents to rig and balance, and more for the writing staff to think up, as well as more time to invest on everyone's part, something their staff doesn't always have in abundance. In which case, the game works just fine as a repeatable arena fighter, similar to Devil May Cry's Bloody Palace mode. Pick one of the closed environments to play in, then see how far you can make it against increasingly difficult waves of enemies, including a few boss battles thrown in. This also means the difficulty would ramp up not just from the enemies, but because the arena was slowly getting demolished, leaving the player with fewer and fewer options to work with. We can even scale this back farther, making only one character available at a time, instead of using the character swapping mechanic. While I'd have no idea what to do with the bumpers instead, this makes programming significantly easier, as we'd only have to design one girl at a time. This also adds replayability at the cost of mechanical depth, letting players attempt each level with every character, similar to the Mercenaries from the recent Resident Evil installments. This also means other arenas and characters could be added later as DLC, like Jean, Penny, or even Cinder as a way to foreshadow just how powerful she is. But if we go bigger, we keep everything we just designed and offer something more. We start designing levels that require combat and skillful maneuvering to get through to the end. We can design boss battles against Massive Grim, who are as much a platforming challenge as a combat-centric one. We can have duels against powerful human opponents like Cinder or Neapolitan. We can craft a story that takes the characters through arcs between seasons. We could explore the cities or wander the grounds of Beacon Academy. The reason I love these mechanics so much is that even the largest scale of this game would just be an extension of ways to use them, rather than adding or subtracting ideas, and doing one iteration of this game doesn't prevent us from doing the other. Despite this being one of my favorite ideas I've ever crafted, this project is always going to be a source of some sadness for me, and I don't think I'm the only one. Monty's work has influenced every single other project I've worked on ever since I first saw Dead Fantasy, and not being able to thank him will be a permanent regret of mine. I had hoped to one day calibrate the hardest difficulty of my games to his standards, and in that spirit, I'm going to label the hardest difficulty Monty Mode. It will be 4 options down on the menu, but efficient players will simply press up and save themselves that crucial 1/8 of a second.
I couldn't take it, couldn't stand another minute. Couldn't bear another day without you in it. All of the joy that I had known for all my life was stripped away from me the minute that you died. To have you in my life was all I ever wanted, but now without you I'm my soul forever haunted. Can't help but feel that I had taken you for granted. No way in hell that I can ever comprehend.